Hi, my beautiful friends. I hope you're having a nice, peaceful, calm time right now. This has been, hi, Bubby. Today is April 1st. So we've been in quarantine for a few weeks now. And I just wanted to make a video about how I use darkness, times of darkness and pain and suffering to awaken and transform for the highest good. That message is needed right now from everything that's going on in the world. And I wanted to share with you my story about the low moments I've had in hopes to show people that they're not alone and that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. I think especially for right now, people are going through, we're all going through a collective dark night of the soul or an intense awakening from introspection. I think with the mandates of having to be separated from the outside world so intensely, we're forced to look within and heal, and that's what this planet desperately needs. So I think through this dark period comes a lot of light. So I just wanted to share with you my story and where I come from, because it's a nice thing for us to know that we're not alone, and hopefully I can help someone out there. And if that's the case, then everything I say will be worth it, and opening up is definitely worth it for that reason. This video is going to be about my story with self-harm and suicidal thoughts and just intense downward spiral moments. So if you're triggered by mental health issues or, you know, by any of the traumatic things I just expressed, then you should click out now, and I'll see you in the next video. For those of you who want to hear my story, here it is. So ever since I can remember, I've known that I'm a special being that's not from this planet. And so whenever I felt very triggered by the world, basically, I would always dream about going home. And if you know anything about astrology, in my 12th house I have Scorpio, and the 12th house represents subconscious mind. I'll list everything the 12th house represents because I'm blanking right now, brain farting. But the subconscious mind, just everything that fuels your underneath, like forces, the endings and new beginnings and all that stuff. And mine is in Scorpio. So Scorpio is all about death and transformation. So needless to say, my subconscious mind has been always on death and transforming, the reality of that. And so death has not been a fearful thing for me ever. I've always known that it is a beautiful transition period from this life to the next life. I would often go towards suicidal thoughts whenever I was triggered. Since I can remember, the ability to go to that extreme dark place and want to go home, and that's why I call it going home, because I'm not from here. So wanting to go home and do that through a way of hurting myself was always a thought that I thought about. I want to talk about my story with being 5150'd. If you don't know, 5150 is when you are forced to go into a mental institution for the minimum required time, which is usually 72 hours, because you have been deemed a threat to yourself and others, so you cannot be free. That's basically what a 5150 is. So the police come and bring you into the hospital and you have to stay there. So about 3 years ago, I was living with my ex-partner at the time, the one I did the twin flame video about. I was living with my twin flame, and we were triggering each other. It was in 2018. We were triggering each other, and it was not a healthy situation. And the more I tried to rise up and get better, I felt like the more I was just pushed down. We were forced to living together because I was kicked out of my living situation prior. And San Francisco is quite, the housing situation here can be an interesting challenge to navigate through for a lot of people, especially me at that time. So I just lived with my twin flame, my ex-partner, and that was not a good choice. Having to be forced to live with your romantic partner is always a stressful time, and especially when it being your twin flame and you're already so tumultuous already. So I just got severely depressed, and that became worse and worse. And yeah, so one day in 2018, it was before my junior year was starting in college, university. So the summer school is just starting, and I couldn't find a place to live, and he made it clear that he didn't want us to live together. So I was trying to find a place to live, not working, and severely depressed. So I decided to, needless to say, I was having intense feelings of wanting to go home and not be in this like intense hellish reality that I was perceiving it that way. Not having to deal with that anymore. So I took some scissors and cut my wrist, just barely scratched, but that was enough to get me 5150'd. And because yes, I did do self-harm. So then that was the first time I ever actually physically hurt myself through the suicidal ideations that I've had for so long. So yeah, that was a very dark time. And so the cops came, I had to go with them, and I rode in the ambulance, got put in. I was very confused, I was so scared. I just wanted to go home and not be around strangers. During that time, it was very triggering for me to be around people I didn't know, because I don't think it's easy for me to be understood by the masses anyway, let alone when I'm in such a dark space. I don't think anyone could understand me, and so that made me afraid. So I was very afraid to be around strangers, people I didn't know. My mom flew out to be around from Florida, and that's where she was living at the time. I was put into the mental hospital, and the one SF General, because that is the only hospital that has a mental health department. So I was transferred there, and that hospital, I think, is very big. It's just, there's a lot going on there, but that was the only place I could go. So I went there. And so how it worked is that there was 2 levels. The first level, hi puppy. The first level was for when you are, it's like for them to screen you and see what's wrong, ask you a few questions, and just observe you, and so that they have a good idea of what's going on before you go into the second level, which is above, like upstairs. And when you go upstairs, you get a room, you see counselors, you start group therapies and stuff like that. So I was in the first level for over a day, and I got a very strange feeling down there. There were like, we couldn't, I just wanted to stand, and I don't know, I just didn't want to like sleep all day. I wanted to stand and read or entertain myself, entertain my mind, because I was so distraught that I was there. And I kept being told, you know, you have to sit down or else we're gonna put you on more medication. You have to do this, you have to do that. I basically had zero control, and that put me in a place of even further dissociation to my reality and not wanting to be in this reality. And so it's like a vicious cycle, the way that they were treating me and the way I was responding. So they were interviewing me, and while the nurse that interviewed me, I almost felt like she wanted me to feel low. The way I would like say something and she would be like, no, you're not. I would say, I just wanted to be with my twin flame, I just want us to be together. And she told me, you'll never be together again. He told me that. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just not something you want to say to someone who's in that place. Like, the energy just overall was not a healing one. It wasn't like they wanted me to feel better. It was just it felt like they wanted me to feel down, and they didn't really want to help me. They just wanted to give me drugs. So I refused the drugs that they were giving me. every few hours they would offer me more, and I would refuse until they said I had to take the drugs. The drug was lithium. If you don't know, lithium is a very intense antipsychotic medication, and I'd never taken anything like that, and I was barely drinking water, so I was definitely dehydrated at the time and very underweight because I had not been eating, because I'm a vegan. If you're new to my channel, yeah, I've been a vegan for almost 10 years, over 10 years now. And so they didn't have a lot of vegan options. The vegan options were like 2 cups of fruit and I don't know, like a peanut butter sandwich. I don't know, not very healthy foods. So I was not eating very much. So, but they told me I had to take the medication or else I would force to be in solitary confinement. And heck no. I need freedom and control of my own reality. That would be insane to me. Like, it's insane that they could just take away my freedom like that. And so I obviously took the medication out of fear of not wanting to be in solitary confinement in this scary space where I already feel out of control and not comfortable. So I took it, and that put me, I just was asleep, and I was like very much in a daze. I felt it like as soon as I took it, I felt the effects of it. Very low and lethargic and drowsy. So I took about like 2 times, and then I think I think it's hard for me to remember the story, but I think I went took it for a day, and then I went upstairs. But when I got upstairs, it was during the nighttime, so all the doctors had left, so I just was put into I was interviewed, put into a room, and yeah, slept. When I was interviewed, they asked why I was down in the first level for so long. They said it's usually less than 24 hours that you're down there, and I was down there for 2 days. And I was like, I don't know. I was very shooken up. It was kind of terrible. You couldn't shower. Like, it was just, you're being judged and observed in the first level to the point where it was just a very frightening experience. There was a lot of control issues there. So I went to the next level, and they said that was very unusual. And I told them that I was taking lithium, and they said that, and I really strongly denied it and rejected and didn't want to. So they said that they could, no problem, they'll observe me, and I could talk to a therapist about it and potentially go to court about it. So the next day rolls around, and I'm in group, and my aunt comes and visits me. It was a very sad time because she didn't want to see me like that. It's very hard to see a family member in such a low state, such a harsh place. What I did to entertain myself, I'd be in my room, write poetry, really dig deep. I started writing poetry in the first level too, just trying to use my mind to be creative. And everyone there that was other patients, excuse me, there were a range of mental capacities in other patients. I definitely saw that, and definitely saw people who would be homeless if they wouldn't be in there, and who had been in there. Like, I talked to people and they've been in there a few times. It seemed they're very used to that system. And that made me quite sad, because I truly felt like I felt the light within them, and that they were truly strong, energetic healers. And the system just is not doing them justice about allowing them to understand what they're going through. Because I truly believe with every adversity comes an equally positive outcome. It has the potential to be equally as positive as it is detrimental at the time. So these people are going through all these hardships and sufferings. If they're taught to see their suffering for the true powers and gifts that they could transform their sufferings into greater alignment and greater light. So I could see that within them, these people. This one woman, she was very out of touch with this reality. She was in a lot of different parallel realities. I believe she was just feeling the energy so strongly of people's subconscious minds. So she was very paranoid and almost like schizophrenic. She would just shout random curse words and accuse people of sexually assaulting her randomly and stuff like that, and just start screaming and stuff. So she was behaving not socially acceptable, I'd say, to the mainstream, for sure, but I think she was actually feeling real things. She was just being misunderstood of what she was saying and what she was experiencing, and she was put on medication. So she, like, her consciousness more and more is being segregated into compartmentalizing itself, because it couldn't stand being its whole entirety in this reality. It would be so intense and so strong. So I remember she saw me and she was like, you're an alien. I know, I've seen beings like you with the eyes like you and from Venus. And she was just like calling me out for sure about me not being from here, being a starseed. Like, she knew. And I was like, I know, it's okay. And she was like, wow, you're so beautiful, I love you. Like, she was giving me so much love. So I definitely feel she was feeling my subconscious mind. And so when she was being very violent towards other random people that had nothing to do with her, I think she was just feeling their subconsciousness and feeling and tapping into all these other parallel realities where possibly these things that she's saying could be existing and happening. Who knows? I think being in that experience basically awakened me to see like the shortcomings of the mental health system in this country and in Western society in whole, and having more compassion for people who are mentally different, because especially if they're going through intense suffering, because through suffering, like I said, comes a lot of great gifts and learning. So they have a lot of potential to be a great being if they're suffering that much, but the system does not like allow them to tap into that or heal through it, because it's so like forced upon, like pharmaceutical industry and medication. It's just a business to keep them revolving and down and dependent on outside stimuli, so they don't ever properly actually heal what's going on inside fully, so they become stronger, because then they want to be able to be as controllable by the powers that be or whatever have you, like the people who benefit from this matrix society. So I was experiencing that. It was very scary because I had a roommate, but our room didn't have a lock on the door. So when I was sleeping there from the very first night, there were this one man who kept trying to come into my room to the point where I had to have a guard stationed outside of my room to protect me and my roommate. Like, he got in a few times. Luckily the roommate, she was like, her bed was facing towards the door, so she would hear the door open, start screaming like, get out, get out, and nurses would come and help us. But yeah, the guys were on one section and the girls were on another side in a different hallways. But the only thing and then there was like this front desk that connected the two, so you had to go through the front desk. And yeah, people just kept trying to get into my room and get to me. It was very clear that my energy was very different there, and you know, like moth to a flame. So I go into group and therapy, and I'm a healer and I'm a truth teller, so I'm just spreading light, spreading more truth, and going through my own stuff, but still trying to help others. So I was able to make a few friends there and help them out. And with the therapist, they would ask me questions and I would answer them. And they said that, because I still was not taking medication and I refused, so they said that I would go to court and see a judge. So that happened on like later the third day, maybe the fourth day. I think I only stayed for 72 hours, but as I retell the story, it must have been more, or it felt like a lot more at least. The third or fourth day, and like my therapist, or the person who was talking to me, was there explaining the situation to the judge, and the judge's job was to decide whether or not I should be put on medication, whether or not, for the remainder of my time and my stay there, because we didn't know when I was going to go home. So the person who was advocating, the person I was talking to, their job was to advocate why I needed it, and the judge was to decide if I need, and I was supposed to speak for myself, and the judge was to decide whether I needed it or not. So that's what happened. They kind of said that I displayed characteristics of a personality disorder, so they were unsure if I did not need it or did. That's what the therapist was saying, and I was just saying like, yes, I have problems. I have suicidal ideations all my life, and I have these issues about feeling belonging to this reality and stuff, but through that I am made who I am. I'm a spiritual person. This is my perspective of the world, and it's not coming from a mentally ill place, it's coming from my heart. And I just spoke my truth like that. And the judge ultimately decided that I did not need medication. They said they didn't know why. They thought I was there just because I'm not being heard through and through. People are just like putting me into situations, and I'm putting myself into situations because I'm not being understood. So all I needed to be was understood and listened to and heard, not medicated. And I found that I was very grateful to the judge for being able to see the truth. I mean, any person in their right mind, unless they were like a power hungry, like vampiristic person who just wanted to make people suffer, any like smart person could see that I did not need to be on antipsychotic medication. So I won the case, so I didn't have to be on medication. And then the next morning I was able to go home, and when I was very grateful to leave that space because I could finally listen to music, go on a walk, eat healthy foods, do yoga, dance, look at the sun, like things that is necessary for healing, take a bath, create things that are necessary for healing. That was not focused on there. What was focused on there was focusing on issues, rehashing like of your traumatic events, what brought you there, and talking about if you need medication. I was barely referred. I was just given to a few like a list of counselors who worked for different rates. I worked for my economic plan, and just basically not a lot of, I was not followed up on at all. And they were like, I hope I don't see you again. Like they were used to seeing people come in and come in and come in. And they were like, you're still young, you still have time, you don't have to be in this revolving system. So I'm grateful that I dealt with that situation when I was so young, and not when I'm say like 30 or 40, because I think it's a whole nother story then. How I healed that time, it took me a long time to heal. Taking the medication of lithium, only even the few times that I did it, 3 times I think it was in total, it was very toxic on my body. I remember I thought when I left the hospital, I went back to my family's houses and I would try to practice yoga and do dancing, like the things that made me heal before. And I was exercising, and I remember feeling this sharp pain in my rib, and I thought my ribs collapsed because my muscles were so weak from taking these muscle deteriorating medications. And I still believe that's what was happening, but I was just feeling a lot of pains internally from my body, and I believe it was from the treatment of being in that space. So for the next few months after all that happened, I was in a very dark space and just really had to focus on healing myself truly and truly. So I finished my year at school, and then I moved into this apartment, and I finished school, and I've been healing and getting better ever since. So I say all that to say, if you deal with suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideations, or if you struggle with depression or intense anxiety, intrusive thoughts, anything like this, you're not alone, and things are able to get better. Now I'm happier than I ever was back then, and I've done more healing on myself than I ever was. I'm not perfect, and I still deal with intense dark periods, but I'm here to tell you, I believe that's a part of what it takes to be a healer for this collective. As you can see, we're all going through this dark time right now. So now more than ever, we need to all heal and dig deep about what we can do to change and grow and be more of our true selves. Because the reason why we're manifesting this suffering and this pain is because our higher selves want us to wake up and grow and learn to be better. than we once were, because obviously we're misaligning ourselves to our higher self. So the higher self just wants us to be our true selves. The universe just wants you to be who you are. So suffering is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to hide from. Even making this video, I felt afraid, and like my subconscious mind did bring up feelings of shame of telling the story. But I think by allowing and being honest with you and allowing you to see who I am and what I've gone through, not only will you have a better understanding of who I am, you'll understand me. My advice and maybe my perspective on life is given a more holistic viewpoint, because you can see that I've gone through a plethora of experiences, good and bad. I would not take back the things that I dealt with during that time for anything, because it has made me who I am today. And I still am working on the feelings of wanting to go home as a starseed, as an empath, especially at a time of right now. It's very misaligning to see what's going on in the world and accept it as reality. But what helps me move through that perspective is knowing that it's all happening for our highest good, because that is the only reason why things happen, is for the highest good of the one, of everyone, you know? So if you're going through any type of downward spiral right now, know that you're not alone, and don't be afraid to reach out and be honest and tell people what you're going through. Maybe they wouldn't be there for you, maybe they'll laugh and think you're crazy, but you did your part because you're being honest and you're being truthful. And my camera cut off, but what I was saying is that you don't have to be ashamed about what you're going through or how you feel. Allow yourself the space to feel what you feel, because that's the only way you will be able to transmute and heal into more of yourself. So yeah, I hope you can do something nice for yourself today. Treat yourself with love and respect, and be gentle with yourself, and give your inner child a hug for me. And I hope this video wasn't too much of a downer, and I hope that you can shine your light so bright, because we need it right now. Love you so much. Bye.